When we think about success, many people automatically go to things or money or titles. The Cambridge Institute of Technology did a research study that said success was made up of three components, and they were skill, environment, and psychology. And can you guess which is the most powerful component to creating success?
Welcome to Conversations That Grow, where we explore how meaningful conversations shape business, leadership, and the way we see the world. I'm Sadaf Beynon, and today I'm joined by the brilliant Christina Langdon. Christina spent 3 decades climbing the corporate ladder, 20 of those years at Martha Stewart Living Omnimedia, and later as CRO at Fast Company. On paper, it looked like success, but behind the scenes, burnout, misalignment, and eventually a life-changing health diagnosis. That moment flipped the script and led her to redefine what success really means. Today, through her coaching and consulting business, Kite, Christina helps leaders tap into their most overlooked superpowers, awareness, and imagination, or as she calls it, human AI. Christina, welcome to the show.
Hi there, it's so good to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. Christina, can you take me back to a conversation that changed something for you? Maybe how you lead, how you grow, or maybe even how you see success?
Yes. One conversation that sticks out among a lot of them is a conversation I had at a lunch with a group of incredibly talented and inspiring women. I was asked to join the lunch because somebody had dropped out. And one of my mentors was there. Now, she wasn't an official mentor. She was just someone I admired quite a bit and wanted to emulate. And this was after I had left working for Martha Stewart Living Omnimedia. I was there for nearly 20 years. And I left soon after not getting the top position, the top role there, after, as I said, nearly 19 years. And somebody offered a prompt that we all had to answer at the lunch. And I think it was around what do you see as one of your biggest failures? And at the lunch, my biggest failure was I didn't get the role. And my mentor, who was sitting at the opposite end of the table, she looked me right in the eyes and she said, "You didn't ask for it." And what? I immediately wanted to defend myself. I really wanted to say, well, I'd worked so hard. I'd been there for 19 years. There was nobody qualified better than me for that role. I had been preparing for it for nearly 20 years. But upon reflection, which was immediate, but also took some time, I realized I didn't ask for it. I thought I deserved it. I thought it would naturally come. And so I believe that each of us are the biggest influencers in our life. And it's up to us to write the scripts of our life. It's up to us to define what success is to us. And it's up to us to intentionally create it, to have the agency to live a very intentional life. Not a life from entitlement, not a life from expectation, but a life that is, and I have abbreviated it, I call it IDC. It's intentional, it's deliberate, and it's consistent. And still to this day, I can go right back to that restaurant, that table, and the look in my mentor's eyes when she shared that with me. And I was really, in hindsight, I was so appreciative of it, even though it hit me like a knife in my heart. I was so appreciative that she felt open enough with me to be able to share what was a really difficult comment.
Wow, I know it is a big thing, isn't it, when someone is that open with you? It's not something that's normal.
Well, and I think like we are who we surround ourselves with. And we have to, like, there is a saying that says if you are the smartest person in the room, then you're in the wrong room.
I like
And
that.
in that moment, I was really in a room of inspiring women who were really lifting me up to be better. There's research out there with the science of people. I think it's called the science of people that shares that when you are around high performers, when you sit near high performers, your performance goes up by 15%. So energy is contagious. And in that moment, I needed that contagious energy to not only reflect, but to become much more aware of who I was and who I wanted to be so that I could take action on it.
Yeah. So what do you think shifted in you through that comment?
Well, my mother would say, you write your own life script. And I think it was my time. Like I had been powering through. Powering through is an energy that for me was intense. It was stressful. It was urgent. It was, highly focused. And our energy is really our vibe. And our energy comes from emotions. And so when I think about the vibe I was setting off, it was probably coming from emotions that were fear, doubt. I mean, as every high achiever, right? We still have the fears, we still have the doubts, and we still have those feelings that can oftentimes produce negative energy. And when there's negative energy, you are putting out a negative vibe. And the vibe I was likely putting out, pretty high. And your vibe, your energy is your value, right? That's the value I bring. So I've learned to become much more aware of what is the vibe I want to be putting out there? What is the energy I want to be putting out there? What does it mean to be successful? What are the feelings of success? For me, it's joy, ease, and impact. I define success as being successful, F-U-L-L. I've added an L. And it's being full of joy, ease, and impact. And having defined it now, I have the ability to make decisions based on those feelings. Will it be joyful? Will I have impact? I'm here today in hopes of creating impact. And if I create impact, when I create impact, it makes me feel joyful, right? So it goes back to being really, really intentional. And when we think about success, many people automatically go to things or money or titles. And the Cambridge Institute of Technology did a research study that said success was a component, was made up of 3 components. And they were skill, environment, and psychology. And can you guess which is the most powerful component to creating success?
Psychology?
Yeah, you're talking to the coach here. Yes, it's psychology. And psychology is mindset. And when you read further down in the research, they attribute success to 85% driven by psychology. So I wish I'd known it earlier. I wish I'd known it in junior high school, in college. Like, if we know that success is really a major factor driven by our mindset, then we know how important it is to manage our mindset. And I'm not managing mindset. I'm not speaking to the general public here in a woo-woo kind of a way. I'm a high achiever. I'm a high performer. But I do have a practice where I am managing my mindset to intentionally create what I want, to have agency in what I want every single day. I ask myself in a simple practice of reflection, what happened yesterday? What worked? What didn't work? What do I want to be doing differently? And I ask myself, what are the feelings that I want to have today? One of the things I see that trips high achievers and leaders and CEOs up a lot is they are stressed for time, right? and they are moving through things all week long. They have not factored in super think time. You call it whatever you want. I call it super think time. Some people call it strategy time. Some people just call it me time, where they're spending time. I recommend 2 hours at a clip, really working on what they want to create in their future, because your present is better when your future is bigger. But if we don't spend time thinking about our future, then we're not making our present better. We're living more on default of the day. So I also find that because of the calendars and because of how busy people are, oftentimes they don't think about the outcomes that they're trying to create. So I've got a difficult conversation. A client will say to me, I've got a difficult conversation coming up, or I have to let somebody go. It's going to be a tough conversation. And I always ask them, what is the outcome that they want from that conversation? Leading ourselves first and leading with impact is really leading from the outcomes that we're trying to create. So let's say we are unfortunately having to let somebody go from our team. Do we want the outcome to be a graceful unwind? Okay, if we want to gracefully unwind from a team member, what would it look like for that to be the outcome of that conversation? And then reverse engineering from there. Outcomes are super important. If I had reversed engineered the outcome from me wanting to get the top dog role at Martha Stewart, I would have said to myself, okay, if I want the job, what do I need to do to intentionally create it? Where do I have an agency in this? I am not my life isn't driven by the circumstances. It's driven by the choices I make, right? So I had so many choices that I could have made to create the outcome, but instead I thought it would just come to me.
Yeah. So this mindset that you're talking about came after that lunch that you were at, and your mentor spoke into your life. What was the contrast between this mindset and what was actually going on in the workplace before that or at that time? Do you know what I mean?
Yes, that's a very good question. So the mindset, it kind of goes back to what I was saying a little bit earlier. The mindset of my career, let's say my corporate career, was all I have to do is work hard. All I have to do is power through. I will be recognized if I just excel, if I work towards becoming exceptional. So when we are in hustle and grind, it can take a toll on our mental energy. And it did for me. I said, as you said in the opening, I was perfect on paper. I had all these incredible titles that were rising up the ladder. Yet I was perfectly miserable because I wasn't living in alignment of what I wanted to create. So I first had to become aware and understanding and learning that the hustle and the powering through wasn't ultimately serving me. And when we're younger in our career, we can do so much hustle. We can do so much performance. But over time, it's just not scalable, right? And oftentimes when people get up higher in their career and even in midlife, people start questioning, is this it? Because this doesn't feel great. And it's because that hustle and grind energy isn't sustainable. So I first had to become really aware of it. I had to learn what mindset was. I had to learn what it was to build awareness. So when you ask people, are you self-aware? In research studies, you ask them, are you self-aware? 87% report that they're self-aware. But the 85%, report that they are self-aware. But actual research is 17%.
Wow, that's huge difference.
Right. So in the work that I've done to redefine, reimagine success, not only for myself, but also for how can I apply what I've learned in creating my own success into organizations. So that as an organization is rising, so are its people. So mindset begins with awareness, knowing what it is, seeing, becoming more aware of our day-to-day thoughts and what we want to generate every single day, having a reflection process every single day. It's a practice. I don't do it every single day. That's like inhuman. I do it most days, right?
And how long do you spend doing that? Is that part like your work day, or is that first thing in the morning? What does that look like?
People do it. You have to do it when it's most comfortable. I think your mind is freshest in the morning, but some people like to do it at the end of the day as sort of a summary for the day. You really have to pick out what works for you. And for some people, it's journaling. For some people, it's taking a walk with no headphones in, just a silent walk where you are listening and thinking and reflecting in your head. Some people do voice journaling where they talk into their phone and record themselves and listen to themselves back. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. The practice that's right for you is the practice that you make right for you. So there's no right way. There's just the way that you make right. But it has to become a practice, which means being intentional, deliberate, and consistent with the practice, doing it as many times as possible. Because when we become aware, here's the thing. So with awareness, and when I was talking earlier about the intensity and the focus and the drive that I had for all those years, I equate it to like the picture of Wonder Woman, when she's got her hands crossed in front of her with the gold cuffs. Every single day we are at work and we are like taking those cuffs and we are fighting off unhappy clients, disappointed bosses, people that we're trying to manage. We enter our workday already in fight mode. When we are in that fight mode, when we are in that defense mode, so no game is won on defense, it's won on offense. And when we show up to work on defense every single day, that means we're in the smallest part of our brain. That means that we're in that primitive brain. And when we're not in the prefrontal cortex. We're not in the brain where imagination exists. So when we are in fear, flight, or freeze, it's very difficult for us to imagine. And breakthrough success, happiness, joy, all of this comes through our critical thinking. It comes through imagination. And by imagination, I'm not necessarily saying, I'm not suggesting anybody be creative like an artist. Imagination is simply asking, what if? It's asking what's possible in pursuit of getting to why not. So awareness and the reflective process, what's working, what's not working, what will I do differently today, is a practice of becoming more aware so that we can start asking ourselves questions around what's possible for today, what's possible for this week, what's possible for the conversation around a layoff I have to do with somebody. What's possible? Is it possible for us to gracefully unwind, right? Awareness and imagination, and I've trademarked it, human AI. I believe it's the first, it's the original, and it's the most profound AI that we have. And it sits in all of us. It's awareness and imagination. And when you apply that to an organization, when an organization is more aware of its strengths, capabilities, capacities, and capabilities, it has a greater opportunity to imagine, to evolve into an organization that has more breakthroughs. So the thing with leadership development is it's a $1 billion industry, yet more than 80% of employees say that they're disengaged at work. And we've heard about quiet quitting and resignation at work. And that would suggest that leadership development's not working.
Yeah.
And I really think we're poised to disrupt leadership development right now. Human AI allows organizations to converge leadership development with strategic planning. Typically, they've been on different tracks, different initiatives, very separate. But when you combine them together into one process, one practice, the organization grows, and as it grows, so does its people. Because an organization that understands that its people are its greatest, most valuable assets, invests in those assets, and is rising with the individual players.
I really understand what you're saying about the whole awareness side of things. I think that self-awareness and that self-reflection is so key to life in general, not just for business. Like how you, if you have that self-awareness, you are able to have so much more control over what you're putting out there and what you're allowing in. And that's really important. Christina, I would love to know how it all started.
It's a good question. So I have been a sort of fan of personal development and trying to understand myself better for years. So I mentioned earlier that I worked for Martha Stewart for quite a long time. And I was an early manager, very young when I was given management responsibility. And as we were rapidly growing, there wasn't a ton of HR support. I was new to leadership, didn't know how to lead. So I often say that on any given lunch hour, you could find me in the Barnes & Noble on 46th Street in New York City on Madison Avenue in the self-help and personal development and leadership aisles. And so I was a big fan, always in search of what can I do to inspire my team, lead my team, influence my team. And so later on, when I was CRO at Fast Company, somebody who reported to me, who was actually out on medical leave for quite a bit of time, she called me and suggested to me that I had changed her life, both professionally and personally, and why wasn't I a coach? And it was a little bit the permission I needed to give myself time to consider it, to really explore it. And I decided I was going to sort of do it on the down low. And I got 8 women together in a room and invited them to come into the Living Your Extraordinary Life workshop, a half-day workshop. And when I was giving it, like I knew I'd come home. I knew that it felt right. My heart was beating out of my chest. And I was so incredibly happy to be doing it and to be helping women and to be making a difference. And I felt the impact I was making. Yet at the same time, I didn't feel well. And that afternoon, I went to the doctor and actually took a blood test. And in about a day later, I was asked to come back in and take another blood test. And by the time I got home, I'm about a mile from the doctor's office. By the time I got home, before I even put my purse on the kitchen table, my cell phone rang, and it was the doctor. And he said, "You have to come right back." And it was 4:30 in the afternoon. What doctor works at 4:30 in the afternoon? He said, "You have to come back. It's much more serious than we thought." So they had me return, and I was given my first bone marrow biopsy, as he told me that I had acute myeloid leukemia. And my first question was, like, what is acute? And he says, fast moving. And so you need to be admitted into the hospital no later than tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
And you will be in the hospital for an extended stay. So my first stint in the hospital was about 36 days. And I remember going into the emergency room at Memorial Sloan Kettering, and there was a series of doctors and nurses coming in asking me a lot of questions about my blood tests. And at that point, I was near critical. At that point, I was definitely critical. And they were asking for me for my symptoms and how I was feeling. But when Dr. Park came in, he asked me some of the same questions. And then he said, you don't come to MSK to be treated. You come to MSK to be cured. And it really was a life-saving thought. And it was a thought at that moment. Now, this was part of a survival tactic as well for me. But in that moment, I looked at my family and I was like, game on. And I had just given that workshop. So I knew I was going to be in the hospital for a long time. And a good bit of it, I wasn't feeling well enough to do anything. But when I was feeling well enough to do something, I put myself in school and enrolled in a coaching certification. I did a lot of reading on the coach I wanted to become and learning about the practices. And I started writing my own book that I published soon, a couple years after. It's called For Success' Sake, Simple Steps for Extraordinary Future. Simple Steps for Extraordinary Possibilities in Leadership and Life. And it's a little bit the story that I went through to become who I am as a coach today, having understood the power of awareness and imagination and how it plays such a significant role in intentionally leading the life you want to lead. And I did a lot of that work and launched my coaching practice, in large part because it was a survival tactic. Because when nothing was at risk, everything was at risk. Wait, I think I said it backwards. When everything was at risk, nothing was at risk. A lot of what I do is work with CEOs to help them see possibilities. I help them see what they can't see, and I help them see what they can see more clearly. And my goal is to help them before they struggle with a health challenge or burnout. I want to help them get ahead of it, because we can manage ourselves much more, even in crisis, than we know. We are so capable of so much more than we give ourselves credit for.
Christina, I've got so many questions that came out of that from what you said. But first of all, how is your health now?
So I was diagnosed on April Fool's Day, 2019. It was no joke.
Not a
right?
joke.
Oh my gosh, it's coming up next week. So I am 5 years from diagnosis. And at that point, you have a 2% reoccurrence rate.
Okay.
So I am really good, and the doctors are joyful and happy, and I am blessed to be here talking to you today.
That's fantastic. That's really great news. I'm pleased to hear that.
Thank you.
Something you said at the beginning when you first started telling me about how you got to this place. You said you started, someone said to you about, why don't you become a coach? And it's like they were giving you permission to explore that and to run with it. You said you started on the down low. Was that because you were not feeling well? Because I know it quickly led into you having a hospital visit, or were you unsure about your abilities?
Oh my goodness, it's a good catch on you. Yeah, I was doing it on the down low. I had a lot of judgment about whether I wanted to be a coach. The expectation for me was to stay in the media business and stay building brands and running revenue. And I even had that expectation for myself. So it was really about being open to a new possibility for a new path forward. And I was recently giving a workshop to help a group of individuals challenge assumptions around how they were running their business and who they were serving. And, in the PowerPoints that you're giving, when you get to the slide where you go through your credibility slide, which is all of the things that you've done to make you credible enough to stand up in front of the organization. Well, what I did in terms of helping them see how assumptions are so pervasive in our life is I went through my credibility slide and I took it apart. So I worked for Martha Stewart, as we said, for about 19 years. When I went to work, my first job was a marketing manager, and I had to take an 18% pay cut to take that job. Now, I wanted to run pretty quickly away from the job I was in. I was not happy with the job and where I was. But if I had believed that I couldn't live on less money, if I had believed that it wasn't possible for me to take a pay cut, I mean, at the time I was probably making less than $40,000 a year. So it was very significant. But I decided I was going to believe in my future and invest in my future through this new job, which led me to great places. But if I believed in my assumptions, I wouldn't have been on the trajectory that I went on. So when I wrote the book, I didn't believe I could create 10 hours in my work week to write the book, which was really what was required to get it out within a year. But if I had believed that I couldn't find 10 hours and that my business would implode, I wouldn't have written the book. And the book has been a new chapter for me. It's created even another new identity for myself. So every step of the way, and you asked about the down low. So I wasn't sure I could make as much money as a coach as I was making in corporate. So that was holding me back as well. And again, I had to believe and invest in the future that I wanted to create for myself, not in the assumptions where the only evidence was the thought in my mind.
How do you figure out whether you're believing in something or pushing towards something that actually doesn't have the longevity that you want it to have?
That's a really, really good question. Another really good question. So belief is something I work on a lot because I really struggle with belief, which is why I know how important it is to creating the future that you want. You know, when you think about like a Jeff Bezos or a Elon Musk or a Sarah Blakely or an Oprah, these were people that had outrageous goals, impossible possibilities. When Jeff Bezos started the Everything Store, people told him it was an impossible dream. People told him it wasn't going to work along the way. And he got into belief. He took action from belief. He did not quit before he saw results. He just kept taking action. So when it comes to belief, it's about really taking massive action and not quitting before we see results. Belief is also about finding the evidence that possibility exists. So on page 17 in the book, For Success' Sake, there is the TENS exercise. And the TENS exercise is an exercise in building belief. And Jeff Bezos, Steve Jobs in his Stanford commencement address said, we cannot connect the dots looking forward. We can only connect the dots looking backwards. So when we look back on what we've created, what we've done, moments of joy, who we surrounded ourselves with, it's actually the clues to your success. So finding belief really begins with seeing how you've created impossible possibilities before. It's looking for evidence in your past where you've created, where you've delivered, where you've achieved before, to be able to use that evidence to help you build belief to a new future that you want to create. And it takes work. Absolutely.
That's cool. I like that. I like what you said there. Something else you said earlier was you were wanting to help business leaders, CEOs, before they get to that point of burnout and misalignment and stress and all of those kinds of things. What are the signs of burnout?
So burnout really it's all really based on feelings. How are we feeling? A lot of times CEOs will come to me and say they feel burnt out. They feel stressed. They feel lonely. That's the number one thing I hear. They feel all alone. They feel self-doubt. They feel a lack of confidence. And it's just not CEOs. It's leaders and even high performers across organizations. We're really more alike then we are different. So signs of being overstressed or signs of burnout are a calendar that is your organizing system. It's a calendar that's jam-packed. It's a calendar that doesn't allow for breathing space. It's not knowing the future that you're trying to create. It's not being really specific. It's not having a definition for success for yourself, for your team, for the business. It's not surrounding yourself with people that are lifting you up, and it's not holding them accountable for what you need inside of your business.
That's makes a lot of sense. How do you find people before they get to that point? Because it sounds like they come to you, or when they're talking with you, they're saying they've got all the burnout signs that there are. How do you help them? How do you help those who are not there yet but are heading that way?
Well, we start with awareness. We have to become aware of what's holding us back. We have to become aware of the stories that we're telling ourselves that are simply just stories. We have to become aware of all of our greatness. Like, the hardest thing for people to do, even when they're working with a coach, is to celebrate all that they've done and all that they've achieved. Because the clues to our future success are back there. Success leaves clues along the way. So once we become a little bit more aware, we can then imagine, where do we want to be? So oftentimes people have a very tumultuous relationship with their business. One of the things we work on is, what is the relationship you want to have with your business? A lot of people have fear. I often have them write a letter from their fear. Write a letter from your fear. What would it say to you? And then I have them write a letter from their future. What do you want your future self to tell you today? You can also write a letter from love. If you're looking for the opposite, write a letter from fear and write a letter from the loving you. Because oftentimes, we are the least compassionate people to ourselves. Another thing that we work on, and this is actually early, I do this early on when I'm starting with people, because it helps them understand intellectually around something that's very emotional, right? So we have 60,000 thoughts a day. In neuroscience, research backs this. That's 60%, 85% are in our subconscious. And of those 85%, 90% are negative. So when we understand that we have story loops that go round and around, and most of those loops are negative, or then we can see that we're all negative, right? And what's interesting about those thoughts, though, is all of those thoughts are about our past for the most part. So even when we think about going back to me and not intentionally creating and asking for the role, I don't know whether I would have gotten it, but by not asking for it and not going for it, I sealed that deal, right? That was failing ahead of time. So we have to be thinking about our future. We have to intentionally be creating it, because the past is not going to create our future unless we allow it to. But that's just living more in the past. And even if I'm going to switch to the business side of things, so it's the same thing with strategic planning. Strategic planning, I'm not necessarily going to say there's not a role for it. There is. But it's planning from the past and doing what we've done before a little bit better. And it's incremental growth. It's linear growth. Is it 10%? Is it 20%? Right? So when we put the process of human AI on top of an organization, what it allows companies to do is say, okay, if I grew my business by 200%, what would be possible? That's not going to come from the past, because your past, if it could have happened, it would have. So that requires entirely new thinking. So helping people, I had a consult with a potential client yesterday and helping her see that her future and the business, she wants to double her business, isn't going to come from doing more of what she's doing now. It's actually going to be coming from something that's different. And it's not going to be coming by putting the numbers together, although we'll do that.
Yeah.
It's going to be coming from her why and what she wants to create. And I offered her a prompt and I said, what if you could create a movement behind your why? And once I asked that question, all of a sudden new possibilities came up. There was some resistance. And then when she let that go, all of a sudden she saw a different future. Like that's where the magic happens.
Yeah. I can imagine. What do the success clues look like? Because you said they're in the past.
Okay, so I'll talk about myself because I think it's just it's easy example. So when I mined my past for my success clues, and when you do the TENS exercise in the book as well on page 17, you're mining your past. So I looked at all the roles that I had, and my first job was 11. I was a dishwasher at a local pizzeria. And then I went on to sell Avon products when I was 13 years old. I went on to be the manager of a market research company on the night shift. I was actually the captain of one of the teams I was on. So you might look at all of my roles, even leading up to the CRO, and saying, oh, she's a leader. But I knew that there was something more underneath that. I wanted to get a little bit more underneath that. And when I dug in deeper, I saw that really the clues were that I was trying to help people be better. When I worked as the manager of that market research company, those women were working on commission. So the more surveys that they could have people take over the phone, I'm dating myself when I tell you that, the more commission they would make. So even running sales teams where people could make more commission, I was in pursuit of helping people better themselves. And when I understood that, it was a whole layer of new meaning about what lit me up, what made me alive, and really where I wanted to go with my next life leap.
So is this similar to what you were saying? You were talking to your potential client about finding the why and the what and her.
And I asked her, what were the greatest moments of success up to that date? And there was a lot. I mean, she'd been in business 10 years. She'd grown her business by 5% annually. There were some wonderful things, but guess what it came down to? Is her ability to help her clients understand that they're living a life, not an and or. It doesn't have to be family or fitness. It can be family and fitness. Helping people understand that is really her secret, is really her superpower. Understanding that superpower, there's so many ways to play. And so that really was mining for the things that lit her up, the things that made her happy, the things that she knew resonated with inside herself, as well as with the people that she was had been working with.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Christina, I know a lot of your work is rooted in your personal experience, but you also spent time working with Martha, who's building her own personal brand, a powerful brand. And you were talking about that book, so For Success' Sake. And in it, I remember when we were doing our pre-call, you said that you had a bonus chapter where you talked about the 7 lessons that you had learned from that time. I'd love for you to share a couple of those with us, ones that have really stuck with you even today.
Yes. So after 20 years, the bulk of my career working for Martha Stewart and under the Martha Stewart Living Omnimedia brand, it was like a master class in both personal branding and in professional branding. It was really like getting my MBA. And I am so appreciative of the time I spent there and the learnings. And I've written about the 7 lessons I learned from Martha Stewart. So early on, she told me something that stuck with me and still is a little bit of my own mantra today. She said, learn something new every day, and go teach it to somebody else. And so learning, I believe, is the fountain of youth. Learning is something that we are responsible for creating in our lives. And we must be learning to grow. We must be learning to be powerful, to be the professionals that we want to be. Learning is energy. It's everything to me. So it's something that I am driven and passionate about. She also said that average wasn't exceptional. Average wasn't acceptable. And when you think about it, when I was growing up, like a C on my report card was average. And now today, a C is not average. It's like getting A's is expected. And so I oftentimes ask people, is this average? Or do you want it to be exceptional? What would exceptional look like? Define exceptional for your brand, for your personal brand. Define exceptional for your business. And then, your brand is how you make people feel. And Maya Angelou talks about it, but Martha Stewart actually delivered it. When she would say it's a good thing, she wanted people to feel good. She wanted people to take their passions and to turn them into profit. She wanted people to feel something from the photographs in the magazine. She wanted people to feel something when they read a recipe, right? So your brand is how you make people feel. And so I oftentimes worked really, really hard to let my clients understand how the brand was in terms of feeling, but also how I felt about their brand.
Yeah.
So that was another one. Another one is surround yourself with people that are better than you. And I talked earlier about energy being contagious and the research that your performance is enhanced when you're sitting near a high performer by like 15%. Martha early on hired exceptional people, and those people hired people who were amazing, who hired people that were amazing. So every day I was surrounded by people that believed that average wasn't acceptable. They believed that excellence was in the everyday. And it challenged me to be better. They challenged me to go back and do things over and over and over again. Sometimes tough, but always more exceptional. Another thing she taught me was that preparation is everything. And Martha would come to a meeting with clients, and while we had given her a brief on the meeting, you always knew that she would do her own work. She would always look into people, and she'd always find something that she could connect with them with people. And she'd bring gifts. So if she found out that they were a gardener, she'd bring seeds from her garden. There was always something extra special. And then the other thing was, and I think that this is sort of has driven everything for me, and that there's always a solution. So even when we created, when there was crisis, or we had difficulty, or there was transformation in the media industry, the people I worked with were driven in belief of that there's always a solution. So when I talk about creating possibility, and when CEOs come to me in burnout or right before burnout, it's getting them to understand what it looks like to live in possibility, because there is always a solution. When you think about going back to the pandemic and CEOs from around the country were told that they had to move their people home, hundreds, millions of people home in a matter of days, and that they didn't know when they were coming back into the office. You can imagine that the first thought was, no way. And there was probably an expletive thrown in there. But everybody at that point had to get into new possibility. So there is a solution to almost everything if you're willing to get into possibility.
It's fascinating. I'm curious, I think it was the second one where you said she said that average wasn't acceptable. And earlier on when we were talking, you were saying that you were quite driven, you wanted to power through, excel, be exceptional. So do you think some of that had anything to do, or did it feed into that drive that you had?
Yes. And if I had understood that mindset was 85% to success, I think about what I could have achieved. And when I mean that, it's not achievement in a new title or more money. I mean that I probably would have been balancing my life better. I would have understand that you live in the and, not in the or. That I could have a successful career and manage 3 young children as a single mother. Instead, I was fighting for both. But now that I understand how to use my mind in pursuit of what I want to create, I go to my days with a plan. I go to my days understanding that some days are going to be tough and some days things are going to fall apart because we're all human. But for the most part, if I'm living in the and, then I can create what I want. Instead, I was living in the powering through. I was good at it, but it probably was taking a toll. It wasn't probably. It took a toll. It took a toll on my health over and over and over again. And it wasn't till the big crisis of leukemia that I said, I'm never doing that again.
Christina, thank you so much for sharing. This has been such fun.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for the time and giving me the space. And you're a terrific interviewer.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind, Christina. Before we wrap up, where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about Kite?
Well, you can always find me on LinkedIn, Christina Langdon. You can find me on Instagram, and it's Christina Langdon, Boss Lady. Kite Labs is our website. I also have a website for myself. That's ChristinaLangdon.com. And if you want more, you can sign up for my newsletter, which is called Sunday Sunshine. It's to beat the Sunday scaries. I send it out on Sunday, and it's a story or a new perspective or an exercise to help people launch the week with a new thought. And you can sign up on my website, ChristinaLangdon.com.
Excellent. Thank you. Yay. And for those tuning in, you'll find all the links and details in the description. Well, that's it for today's episode. Christina, thanks again for your time and for bringing such value to the show.
Thank you for having me, and here's to your success.
Thank you. And to those listening, thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe for more conversations that open doors, create opportunities, and shape the way we think. So from Christina and from me, thanks for listening. Bye for now.